You're a success the moment you open your studio door. Time, not the market, determines quality. Everything you need to be a painter, you've probably possessed since the first grade. Your job is to manufacture boredom, to gain access to those things. Art is a highly orchestrated form of boredom. If you're in a hurry to figure out what it means, you're going to miss everything. What made you want to paint? You know, but you forgot. I'm talking about the simple things. The things transmitted from way down at the end of the AM band. Remember driving in the 80s? Stop trying so hard. Lower the stakes. The moment you realize this, you go from being a transmitter to a receiver. In the words of Philip Roth, don't invent, just remember. When did you first become aware of art? Really think about it. I remember the exact moment. When I was a kid, I did two things well. I could pick up AM radio through my teeth, and I could pay attention. In the late 70s, James Brown came to my hometown of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, to do a concert. The owner of the convention center was a family friend and invited my folks and me to sound check on the morning of the show. Dad lifted me up and plopped me down on top of one of the massive speakers that flanked the stage. I sat crisscross applesauce and faced the microphone. Out walked the godfather of soul. The bass and drums kicked. I levitated. Pure funk vibrated up my spine and into my skull. There was no time to think, only feel. I was helpless. For the first time, I realized that there were people whose job it was to make a thing whose sole purpose was to be that thing. It didn't heat homes or purify water. Its only function was to renew our sensual and emotional life, to paraphrase Frank Levis. To do this, a work of art must be airtight and vacuum sealed. No gap between intent and execution. The slightest gap means that your work is about something. That's the sign of an amateur. Amateurs paint about stuff. Professionals paint. All it takes is time and materials. Learn your materials, for they are not the delivery system for content. They are content. In other words, don't get inspired to paint. Paint to get inspired. Trust your sensitivity. When you become possessed by process, the universe gets larger and you get smaller. That feels good. How do you apply this to your painting? Don't say too many things. We don't need more information art. Be concise. Charles Hawthorne said, painting is like giving an after-dinner speech. If you want to be remembered, say one thing and sit down. My two favorite sentences in the English language are Jesus wept and Jeremiah was a bullfrog. I wrote them on my studio wall to remind me to be concise. James Brown and his band showed me that art isn't created, it's made. My body felt it get made. This wasn't intellectual, it was physical. Art came to me not through my brain, but my body. James Brown looked me in the eyes and sung the only permission slip I'd ever need. I feel good. I knew that it would. From that day on, I judge every work of art with the Tookus test. I don't ask, what does it mean, but rather, how do I feel? Sure, painting is intellectual, otherwise it would be a refrigerator magnet. But every thought begins with a feeling. In the words of George Clinton, free your mind and your ass will follow. To author means to authorize, to give permission for something to happen. When I was younger, I imposed my will on oil paint. Now I'm older, and I get the heck out of the way and let the paint do what it wants to do. Robert Rauschenberg, who helped me early in my career, said, "You begin with the possibilities of the materials." We are culture's last folk artists because we make stuff by hand. A buttery brushstroke doesn't need to be anything other than a buttery brushstroke. Sometimes the truth isn't discovered, it's manufactured. Painting from nature doesn't mean copying it, but registering thoughts and emotions on a surface with all of the contemplative energy, luxurious beauty, and the strange incantatory spell that comes from the marriage of sense and sight. That's the key, the marriage of sense and sight. I use the word marriage advisedly because it implies not just a merging, but a stitching together of two things to make a third thing. What is your third thing? It's your clear-seeing place. Sculptor Konstantin Brancusi kept an antique globe in his studio. Over time, he imagined that the continents faded away one by one until all that was left was a pale blue sphere. No information, only form. Why does everything have to be interesting? From donuts to politics, we are losing our capacity for boredom. There's an old Catskills joke. I started playing piano at 5 and quit by 5:30. An artist must know when to quit. As soon as work becomes labor, quit. Do something else. You don't have to get it right every time. You're a painter, not a pilot. Galleries are lined wall to wall with information art. The smarter it sounds, the more exclusive. But isn't the purpose of art to expose the threads that connect us? Not exclude those without a secret decoder ring. If your goal is to make art, you're trying too hard. In other words, lower the stakes. People with high expectations usually have low resilience. What's more impressive, seeing a man levitate 5 feet off the ground, or seeing the same man with a cinder block strapped to his ankles float 5 inches off the ground? Henry David Thoreau wrote, "An artist is someone who, having nothing to do, finds something to do." So, how do you get bored? I park it on a bench in Central Park by myself and watch the world go by. If there are people, I sit uncomfortably close, stare straight ahead, and ask, "Did you bring the money?" And once I'm alone, I spread my wings and marinate in blissful boredom. What does this have to do with painting? Everything. Painting, like sitting, is local knowledge. It is a process about process. There is no meaning, yet it's rich in content. These moments of lucidity must be sustained and permeate every pore in my body. Nothing enormous needs to happen because the job of an artist is to make stuff happen where it appears that nothing is. Feel with your tuchus before you think with your brain. The conceptual reverie of Mondrian's grids would have been impossible without the empirical reverie of sitting under apple trees. Leave the messages to Western Union. Every morning I wake up, look in the mirror, and decide which one of the village people I'm going to be that day. Today, it's the construction worker, because my job is to make something from nothing. We can learn a lot as painters from construction sites, because at a construction site, all of the materials are laid out before the work ever starts. All of the limestone, concrete, nails, and lumber, so that when work starts, they don't have to stop. The same thing in my studio. Before I start work, my materials are laid out. My colors are ready to go. The caps are off the tubes. The canvases are primed and hung. The mediums are pre-mixed, and the fridge is stocked with cold seltzer so that I don't have to stop. Last August, I began a major commission for the Duke Endowment, a private foundation founded in 1924 by the industrialist and philanthropist James B. Duke. It supports selected programs in higher education, healthcare, children's welfare, and spiritual life in North and South Carolina. And it was a great honor for me to be asked to create a painting for their headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I got you a plane ticket, so you can fly up to New York, sit next to me in my studio, and see the painting from beginning to end. Last August, on a day hotter than a witch's armpit, I received a custom 7 by 14 foot stretcher made by my pals at Soho Art Materials. I've known Wally, the founder, since he worked in the canvas department at Pearl Paint on Canal Street over 30 years ago. I use pre-primed Italian linen on an aluminum stretcher. 7 by 14 feet is the largest size I can do in my current studio, so the stretcher is in 2 parts plated together, which I'll show you later. The first month. German painter Walter Sickert advised, start like a bricklayer, finish like a jeweler. Here, I'm laying bricks. I'm blocking in large masses of color with only Gamsol, no mediums. This allows for a shorter drying time. These first moments of the painting must tell the entire story. Everything the viewer needs is hinted at on the first day, so be generous of spirit and gesture. I'm not saying that the final painting has to look like the beginning, but the essence should be innate. My advice? Do something wild on the first day. Let out the monkey, as my teacher used to say. How do you let out the monkey? Limit your perspectives. Freedom isn't doing anything you want, but everything you can within walls. Do one thing and then exaggerate that thing over and over again. All my landscapes suggest standing in one season, peering into another. To suggest this temporal aspect, I paint cooler tones on one side and warmer hues on the other, as if standing in October, peering into May. Standing here while looking there. I exaggerate that again and again. 2 to 3 months. I've been thinking about German Romantic painter Philipp Otto Rung's suite of prints called Times of Day. I filled the left side with ultramarine and cobalt blue moonlit shadows, raking diagonally into a purple riverbank meandering into the distance, made of dioxazine purple with some raw umber. Now I am moving from lean to fat, meaning I'm adding my medium of choice, which is 1/3 Gamsol, 1/3 Galkid, and 1/3 walnut oil. The more layers I add, the fatter the paint. I love extremes of contrast, very close to very far. My paintings present the landscape in the same way I learned to see it as a kid in the marshes of Murrells Inlet, by lying on my belly with my chin in the dirt, foreground so close I can taste it, and background far away. No middle ground. Seeing from a bug's eye view instantly compresses space, like closing an accordion, and makes the viewer complicit in reconstructing the landscape. I provide the close-up and the far away. The viewer supplies the middle. This is nothing new. The Canadian group of 7 painters from the 20s and 30s eliminated middle ground to give the spectator the impression of being in direct proximity with the raw power of nature. And, in the words of poet Seamus Heaney, catch the heart off guard and blow it open. This painting forces 3 views into one image. Close on the left, far away in the middle, and extreme close on the right. Content in my work is a direct function of how near or far away something appears from your face. That's it. The Western eye is trained to read from left to right. Therefore, I compose with this lateral span in mind. Just like my tree studies, my landscape paintings don't rely on linear perspective to establish pictorial depth, but are more akin to Egyptian friezes, in which a wide entablature is decorated with reliefs rhythmically arranged across shallow space. However, rather than a panoramic view from a static vantage point, I want your gaze to travel across the terrain, like a tracking shot in a film, as if you're actually wandering in the woods, not talking, just walking. I use verticals not as trees, but as stand-ins for the solitary viewer. I want the painting to feel worn out and worn in like a good pair of Levi's, so that you feel as if it's already been seen from every angle long before you arrived. This is an homage to the 17th century Dutch painter, Jacques Degaine, who placed hidden eyes in his compositions to suggest sight lines, but also to warm up the engine. We are about 4 months in at this point, and this is my least favorite stage. This is where the painting is trying too hard. It's doing too many things. It also feels too warm in color. It needs a shot of ice water, and this toothpaste green did the trick. It's cobalt teal, emerald green, and titanium white applied in thin, tissue-like glazes with lots of medium. Still, there was something missing. Then, one day I walked into my dark studio and noticed a single shard of light cast from the reflection of the building across the street onto the bottom of the painting. And I remembered a quote from the sculptor Constantine Brancusi. When you see a fish, you don't think of its scales, do you? You think of its speed, its floating, flashing body seen through the water. I understand exactly what he meant. I was raised on the beach. I knew fish before I knew people. The seamless union of form and function that is the fish. The stripes of hot pink in the middle of my painting are the flashing body of Brancusi's fish, slicing through the water. Seeing a Brancusi sculpture is knowing it at once. Prolonged looking doesn't add much to the initial knowledge. Time simply reproduces that first sensation. There is great power in sameness, in limited perspectives. For example, J.S. Bach's Goldberg Variations begins and ends with the same theme. There is a wide palette of moods and colors in the 30 variations between the aria and the coda. But everything you need to know, you get in the first 2 minutes. That's how I want to paint. When in doubt, I think of a fish. Here is the final painting, which I titled The Wild South. After 6 months, the painting is finally ready to be soft rolled. An assistant helped me remove the metal plates joining the two halves in the back, and we slowly folded the canvas like a slice of New York pizza around a tube buffered by thick rings of bubble wrap. Then it picks up in a truck and is off to my friends at Ziello Frames in Brooklyn, who masterfully crafted a dark walnut frame and packed the painting for transport to North Carolina. Next, my friend Steve and his assistant flew up from Charlotte, rented a truck, and drove the painting from Brooklyn back to Charlotte, where it was met by a top-notch crew who handled the offload and installation. I couldn't do any of this without all of the professionals who support me.